Welcome back to another episode of Intimacy Secrets Podcast. On today's show, I'll be talking about self-intimacy. In fact, let me start with a quote that I posted earlier this week on Facebook. It's by Neil Strauss. Perhaps the biggest mistake I've made in the past was that I believed love was about finding the right person. In reality, love is about becoming the right person. Don't look for the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Become the person you want to spend your life with. Welcome to Intimacy Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Smith. This podcast is for singles and couples that want to ignite, excite, and delight in all things intimacy. This podcast will teach you how to be the perfect lover and to put the sizzle into your relationship. In my work with singles and couples, it has become clear that most of us lack self-intimacy. And this lack of intimacy with self is holding us all back in building lasting, intimate relationships. This isn't surprising, as how we relate to the world around us is a reflection of how we relate to ourselves. In the words of RuPaul, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else? But instead of being able to have intimate, fulfilling relationships and build connection with ourselves and others, our society is becoming defined through alienation and detachment. This is evident in the way we relate to each other and the way we live our lives, dissociated and distracted by technology, consumerism, and entertainment, and the societal dysfunction starts with each one of us. In his book, Learned Optimism, Martin Seligman said that unless we become more aware of what is going on in our psyches, we relegate ourselves to being automatons that merely exist year after year, blindly reacting to external reality based on our early childhood programming, which is often emotionally immature and driven by fear. If we want to have any chance of reaching our capability as individuals or as a species, then each of us has to take responsibility for our own psychological being. And in my work, I have found that the most powerful way for any individual to do this is to become self-aware, to have self-intimacy. What I've noticed is that lack of self-intimacy causes a lack in love for self. How can you love yourself when you lack self-awareness? The reality is you don't know what you don't know. This results in the development of a poor sense of self, internally fragile, leaving the power of self in the hands of the universe. Imagine for a moment, if 0 to 7 years of age are our early programming years, and we are dependent on that early programming to guide us through all phases of our lives. What if, by some unfortunate roll of the dice, your programmers, i.e. parents, guardian, or family, were unhealthy, neglectful, and detached? Then is it any wonder why so many people define feeling as a void? They are desperately seeking and in search of love, peace, joy, and happiness. Sadly, this leads to many problems in our lives. Without a solid psychological foundation, we look for our validation and sense of who we are outside of ourself. This paradox of seeking self outside of self leads to a fragile, externally based, or low self-esteem, and a host of problems, including anxiety, depression, and treating self without respect. We find numerous ways to check out, to fill the void. Food, alcohol, drugs, sex, shopping. Or you may find yourself in an emotionally empty relationship after relationship, or a dead-end marriage that lacks intimacy and causes suffering and pain, or ends in divorce. These are all kind of a domino effect, starting from the original fact that your primary caregivers failed to embed self-intimacy into your programming. You can relate to this, can't you? Or this might even sound like you. Until you develop a healthy, intimate relationship with yourself, you stand little chance of having a sustainable, healthy relationship with anyone else. But there is good news. You can learn self-intimacy starting today. So is it difficult? Is self-intimacy rarely experienced because it is hard to achieve? Is it something only the most enlightened, spiritual, and emotionally intelligent people can experience? No, it's not complex or difficult to understand. And it doesn't take years of hard work and self-denial. In fact, it doesn't take years of anything. Significant growth in self-intimacy can be achieved in weeks and months, and then constantly and consistently grow itself throughout the rest of your life. Anyone who strives for it can achieve it. You just have to have a desire to know yourself deeply. It's not about the intellect, the cognitive processes, and thoughts. Fundamental to understanding self-intimacy is knowing that at its foundation, it is an awareness of your emotions and feelings. It really is as simple as that. Awareness is the key, and awareness is enough to start changing things. Now, I can almost hear you saying, so if anyone can have it, and it's not hard, then why aren't we all doing it? Good question. Well, rather than being seen as an essential part of our well-being, there seems to be a culture bias against self-intimacy in our modern world. People consider that it is selfish to focus on the self, and that the psychological or emotional is not given the same credibility as the intellectual. And whilst this is changing, it is a slow burn. Giving the same level of importance to our emotional growth as we do to our intellectual pursuits is not yet the norm, but it is an essential element of our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. The ability to have a strong sense and awareness of self is integral to every aspect of our lives and is the foundation of being able to build functional, connected, and intimate relationships, whether they be platonic, professional, or personal. And as a therapist, I know that people's emotions can be understood as messages from your true self. At their most basic, they are your warnings, your signposts that show you the way or tell you to take a different path. And without being aware of what they are telling you, you are likely to blindly follow your reactions to your fear-based programming. Self-intimacy, emotional awareness lets you hear these important messages, read the signs, understand the meaning, and dictate your own path. The one that will lead you to fulfillment and alignment with who you truly are. You can use the awareness that comes along with self-intimacy to notice your emotional experiences and consciously make decisions that are healthy and constructive for you. You learn to respond rather than react, and to direct your life rather than be led by your wild emotions. Every second of every day, you are feeling emotional responses to stimuli, both internal and external, that result in a variety of emotional states or moods. Most of these slip past your consciousness and go unnoticed, but they play a big part in how you act and react. They impact on your behaviors. For example, when you get defensive, when you feel blamed or threatened in some way, with practice, you will become conscious of the emotion and how it is driving your choices. And because you have access to information that is most pertinent to any personal situation, you are able to make wise, informed decisions that are authentic and are in line with taking good care of yourself. And if that wasn't enough, there is another big bonus to having self-intimacy: self-acceptance. Without this, we spend our lives doubting ourselves. Do you recognize that voice? That inner critic that gives you such a hard time? The one that pops up every time you are moved to put your needs, your wants, on the front of your life? The one that tells you that you are useless, that you are getting it wrong, that you are ridiculous for ever thinking that you could be lovable. If you disrespected your friends in that way, you wouldn't have any of it. Self-intimacy increases self-acceptance. Knowing who you are, your true self, recognizing and understanding your emotions and feelings helps you to understand that they are important, that you matter, that you are worthy of love and deserving of care. Self-love and self-respect grow, and it is amazing what a difference having self-intimacy will make to the way you present yourself to the world. And because of this, it changes the way people respond and interact with you. It changes your ability to have intimate relationships. As your ability to become intimate with yourself grows, you will learn to acknowledge positive emotions, and the patterns of disconnection that have become so ingrained will begin to lose their hold. You will find that as you become aware of your emotions, you notice the times you withdraw, when you put up barriers and you are able to take action to reconnect. You will stop walking through life in a trance, and your life and your relationships will become healthy, vibrant, and alive. You can't have a truly intimate relationship with another until you have one with yourself. Until you understand yourself and know what you want and need, you cannot begin to find it. You can only share your feelings, your desires, your needs, your most intimate self with another person once you truly know who you are, deeply and intimately. Self-intimacy opens the door to deep connection, and as you fearlessly show your true self to another, you unconsciously give them permission to do the same. This is where you will find the soul-to-soul connection that we all desire from our most intimate, personal relationships. So how do you develop self-intimacy? How do you learn to become aware of the emotions that you are experiencing moment to moment? It's practice. It's constant coming back to yourself from the distractions and resulting disconnection, examining the emotion in the moment. There are some simple steps that you can begin taking right now that will teach you to focus your attention inward, to connect with your true self and build your self-intimacy every day. Here are 5 simple steps to developing self-intimacy. 1. Breathe. Breath is life-producing. It is a powerful resource that you can access at any time and any place. When you are stressed and overwhelmed, your normal breathing state shifts. These physiological shifts generate undesired emotional messages that are internally perceived as threats to the system. When you are in a relaxed state of being, your breathing patterns will align throughout the system. Take a moment and practice deep breathing by putting your hands on your belly and slowly inhaling and slowly exhaling 9 or 10 times. And notice how you feel. Go ahead. Try it now. Breath work is foundational for change work. When I work with clients, it is vital that they understand that the way they breathe is often the result of how they feel. Once a client learns how to ground themselves through breath work, they can easily stabilize and reset themselves when triggered. I call this technique rooting. 2. Pay attention to how you feel and where you feel the feeling in your body. Next time you are triggered by a feeling, locate the feeling in your body and allow yourself to experience the feeling without reacting, fading, or denying it. Notice how the feeling manifests within your body. Does it have movement, a temperature, or a color? 3. Identify the emotion generated by the feeling. For example, you may be feeling angry, but the emotion or action that's produced is kicking and screaming. Take a few moments daily to link your feelings with your emotions. As you begin to focus on how your system runs, you can then delete and install new programming based on your desire. 4. Gain conscious awareness. Once you identify feelings and emotions, you will then generate thoughts. I know this isn't the way you were taught. You were taught to use willpower and mind over matter to overwrite or redirect your feelings and emotions. However, that's not how it works. For now, just go with it. Feelings generate emotions, and emotions generate thoughts. Don't believe me? When was the last time you willed yourself to sleep? Didn't think so. Conscious awareness is a precious resource with a daily dole-out of power. Protect it at all costs for necessary expenditures like higher-level thinking and executive decision-making. Once this resource is depleted and out of battery life, the system always defaults to lower-level systems. This is often problematic. We'll discuss this more in future podcasts. 5. Journal your most intimate thoughts, feelings, emotions. No filter. Write a letter to your internal self, your soul, or to the part of self that needs care. Tune into your intuitive self. It knows what it needs. Be patient. It takes focus and attunement. Keep practicing. Developing an intimate relationship outside of self always begins inside. Be kind to yourself. Show up. Be there for you. Developing self-intimacy is like exercising a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. Maintaining a strong self-intimacy muscle and having a healthy, intimate relationship with self will give you a solid foundation for building lasting, connected, intimate relationships with others throughout your life. I hope that listening to this podcast has now deepened your understanding of what self-intimacy is, the important part it plays in your personal relationships, and that you will use the 5 simple steps to develop, and strengthen your self-intimacy. Remember, I welcome questions and would love to answer any that you have. So please, ask away. So make sure you join me on my next podcast, where we'll be exploring sexual intimacy and its connection with auric energy. Make sure you listen in for this fascinating topic. In fact, if you subscribe now, you'll never have to miss out on this great content. In the meantime, as you consider how much you will benefit from increased self-intimacy, why not download my free ebook, Enhancing Emotional Intimacy, by clicking on the link below, and you'll gain access to this incredible resource now. That wraps up another episode of Intimacy Secrets Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I look forward to speaking with you next week.